Hello and welcome to Healing with Coherence, another episode of the podcast founded by Radiant Life Technologies. If you have been listening to our previous episodes, you already know that our focus is on health, medical technology, and the profound transformation that health and healing practices as well as medicine has been undergoing today. And we've been meeting in the podcast with personalities which are well known for their different approach to health, for their different outlook on health and healing, with a main focus on taking health into our own hands and being responsible for our health and for our state of being. My guest today is a very special guest from the area of athleticism, martial arts, and sports. His name is Cameron Shayne. Cameron is a martial art teacher. He's a master and black belt holder in martial arts. He's an athlete. He's the father of the so-called mixed martial arts culture, which he named Budokon, and he's been teaching Budokon and developing Budokon since its introduction, which was in 2001. And Cameron has been combining the combat arts of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts together with yoga, crawling patterns, mobility, calisthenics, and cognitive studies within that complex of Budokon. So we'll be talking today with Cameron about his experience with Budokon. We'll be talking about his overview on health and healing and how Budokon is actually helping people to stay healthy, to regain their health, how it's been helping them to approach life in a more holistic and self-sufficient way. And we'll be looking into the personal wisdom of Cameron within the area of longevity and holistic health. And I'll be trying as well to get from Cameron his personal tips and advices on how he has been able to stay in a top form, still in his 50s, and basically how he's been successful in teaching his students to follow in his steps. So without any further ado, let's welcome Cameron Shayne and start the discussion. Okay, Cameron, welcome to Healing with Coherence.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a big pleasure to have you here. It's a big pleasure to see you again after we met in Prague. And I underwent your workshop with your wife. It was a great experience.
Yes, thank you for joining us. It was nice to meet you there, and we enjoyed the community. Really nice group, really nice people. My first time in Prague, and I was just really impressed with the city and the community and the attitude of everyone. It's just really, really lovely, movement community.
Happy to hear that. Happy to hear that. Cameron, the opportunity I had to experience you, and from what I know about you, you are like predominantly an athlete, a sportsman, a martial artist, but I connect movement and especially martial arts and yoga, which you have been practicing as well, with health. I see there a direct link. And I think like the athleticism in overall and sports in overall and movement in overall. So I would like today to speak with you about your outlook on health, on how you feel about people today taking care of their health, overall misconceptions around health, and how you have been introducing like holistic health approach to your students through your Budokon teachings. And I would like to start with a question. Let's jump into the deep What do you think, what do you feel are the main misconceptions of people today about health, about their health and taking care of their health?
Uh, you know, honestly, I don't feel that there's a lot of misconception. I think that is sort of a generation ago, an era that is past. I think that the access to information is so abundant and so I, when I say abundant, I mean that, of course, there's a tremendous amount of evidence that processed foods and sugar and chemical dyes, and there's enough information out there, an abundance of it, for the average person to have some contact with it, whether it was on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, there's just too much. There's too much access to deny accountability, to play dumb. There's no way a person could say I never came across that information in this particular time. So I don't support the idea that there's any misconception around health and wellness. Now, with the exception of a very insulated population, maybe like your poorest community, who is, doesn't have, for whatever reason, doesn't have access to social media, but again, it's hard to argue no one does anymore. But let's just say I'll play devil's advocate on that there's some community that has less. There are food deserts in certain communities where they're so, at least in the United States, where population lives in an area where there just isn't access to really high quality food. The food is primarily processed, and it's just garbage for the most part. It's the cheapest food that is being produced, and that's what's in their neighborhood grocery.
Okay.
So with the exception of that population, I think it's hard for any person to argue that they didn't know that excessive sugar, excessive processed foods, excessive seed oils, excessive artificial this, artificial that wasn't good for them. I think at this point, what we're dealing with here is not ignorance, but rather a psychological, addiction. This is, we're obviously wandering into the realm of, human consciousness, but I think we're dealing with psychological issues versus an issue of information.
Okay.
So that'd be the first thing that I would address right from the beginning, is to say I feel there are very few people that don't know that their diet is connected to their health.
Okay.
So I completely reject that as an argument. I can't take that argument seriously in 2024 in first world countries, Czech, Germany, Poland. In first world country, to deny that would be to me isn't a serious argument. So if we start from that place where we say, okay, what are the misconceptions? I'd say there are no misconceptions. I'd say everyone knows that this is not good for you, and that it is related to disease, and that they're making a choice based on convenience, comfort. You know, they're simply not being disciplined. They're choosing what's easy over, you know, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. We all know that it's easier to stop at a, you know, a little bodega and grab something to go. You know, that's much simpler and easier than going home and preparing food, going to the grocery store, buying fresh food, bringing it home, prepping it, making it, cleaning up. People just want the convenience of to go pick up, disposable, I'm done. That's an addiction for first world, you know, culture and communities. So that in itself is one of. So I think in other words, I think we're asking the wrong questions. You know, because it's sort of easy to pick the low hanging fruit of, gosh, well, you know, what are people getting wrong? What don't people understand? I think the question is, why are people, you know, so you know, so unmotivated to be at the, you know, to live in their optimal health? Why do people not seem to care enough to make that decision? You know, it's like I give you a very expensive sports car and you just decide that you're not going to check the oil, you're not going to put good gas in it, you're not going to buy, you know, the best things for it, and you're just going to let it sit and deteriorate because you just don't have the will to do the work to care for that, because everything in the world we live in requires maintenance and care, whether it's the human body or it's something that we have produced. So the real question is, why don't we have the will to live longer? Why don't we have the will to live better? Why don't we have the will to you know, live you know, to the capacity we can? And that's maybe that's a personal question that only each individual can answer. Maybe you can then reduce it to, you know, 4 or 5 different answer, you know, 4 or 5 different I would say you could put it into categories, you know, from people. You know, one might drop into, well, you know, I don't have the resources, it's too expensive to eat well. Another person might say, oh, I don't have the time, it takes too much time to eat well and live well, you know, and another. So you could probably start finding, you know, your consistent responses. You start finding basically a pattern of belief that then falls into, you know, a small category. After a while, I you know.
Right. Well, you know, I can resonate very much about with the convenience, right? I mean, with the convenience notion. And I've been wondering how far actually this convenience notion and being used to convenience, how far it leads people into not really actively taking care of their health. And what I mean here is as well, you know, I shared with you at the beginning before we started the actual recording that what I see as, for me, one of the, I don't know if it's the right word, is misconception, but actually people tend to put their power, their personal power and their health out of themselves. It means they don't believe that they have the power to take care of them, of their health. You know, like you say, okay, well, they have all the information, but still they tend to go to the expert for even like very little things, and they don't believe, or they are not willing to take like health into their own hands in a way, you know. So I don't know, for example, if there is comparison between how you train people in your practice. Let's say if you give them the input and impulse, and then you show them how to do that, and then basically you leave them to practice, and you're not there all the time, and you're not able all the time, to. I've experienced you on the training. I mean, okay, you would come to me, you would just tell me individually on the workshop, hey, you're doing this wrong, you can maybe do it better like this, but then you leave me, right? And the whole day, basically, I've been observing the people around, I've been observing you, and I've been trying to do all the work myself. So I've been looking for this comparison, as well, between, you are obviously an expert in your art, but you anyway just show the way, and you don't like lead people, by their hand. So that's the notion where I see about the misconception, basically not really taking responsibility. Do you see something similar?
Well, I mean, I think that you have to, you have to allow people to have space to fail or succeed, on their own merit, and due to their own effort. Sitting and holding someone's hand the entire way through movement, I'm not, I don't think that's a right or wrong thing. In other words, if I was doing a private or a one-on-one session with you, I would, obviously be correcting and adjusting you throughout the work, versus a room with 50 people in it.
Sure,
So
obviously.
right, each container allows for what it allows for. With so but at some point you do have to let the student do the work. So it's like if I taught you how to prepare or cook a particular cuisine, at some point I'm going to have to let you make the dish, or you're never going to make the dish. If I'm standing next to you always telling you exactly what to put in it, you'll never make the dish your way. You'll never discover anything. You'll never fail. You'll never succeed, because basically you're basically just curating what I'm asking you to curate. So you're not really making the dish yourself. You're just following instructions. So it's until you're doing whatever you're doing on your own, you're not really doing it. And so I think that it's imperative that you allow your student to do their to have an autonomous experience with the work. So I think that goes for anything with nutrition or with longevity, with life. It's like you give people information, and then they start to work with it and make decisions. I mean, they're typically with human beings, I think you could reduce our motivation down to two things. It's either pain or joy. Something's bringing us joy, and that's why we do it, or something's bringing us pain, and that's why we avoid that and look for that. So something pushes us in a direction, and I think that's pleasure and pain, of course. So if I'm eating terribly and I'm experiencing a lot of pain from that, I might just get pushed in the direction of a healthier diet because of the pain of inflammation and the disruption of my metabolic system and my health. So I'm going, okay, well, now I need to eat better because I'm suffering. Or eating well, maybe I had parents that make great food, and so I just always I've always enjoyed had the pleasure of eating well, and that's what my palate is looking for and enjoys. So I I think that humans are one of the worst things I think you can experience as a human is the middle ground of that, is where you're not you're in a position where you're not suffering because of what you're doing, but you're also not experiencing any great pleasure from it, any great awareness of it. So it's kind of like you're eating this mid-level, and I'm going to use it, that is just a general description, but a mid-level diet. It's not a high quality diet. It's not a low quality diet. It's somewhere in the middle. So, your health isn't, you're not experiencing terrible things, because if you eat a mid-level diet, which means that, let's describe that as you're not eating McDonald's every day. You're having a kind of you're eating decent food, but it's not the best ingredients. You're not getting the highest quality. You're still cooking with seed oils. You're still using things that over the course of time, cause disease.
Yeah.
But they take longer, because when you eat a really low quality diet, usually you'll run into your problem much sooner, because it's like a car. You can pour really bad fuel into a car for so long, but not that long, and before you start to experience problems.
Sure.
But you can put a mid-level fuel in that car. Maybe it goes another 10 years before, but you're still going to run into the same problem.
But it will take longer, obviously.
It'll take longer, right?
Yeah.
So I think people are in one of those three categories of, food behavior,
right,
dietary behavior. And you just got to kind of figure out where you're at in that. And then you've got to start making decisions. But the problem is, when you're in a mid-level, when you're living that maybe the best way to describe it, which is one of my favorite words, is mediocrity. You're not living in greatness. You're not living your worst. It's just mediocre.
Right.
It's the middle. Sometimes the middle to me is worse. And the reason I frame it as the worst is that it's not problematic enough to motivate you away from it, and it's not great enough to sort of draw you toward it. It's like being in a warm bath. It's not hot, it's not cold. You're just like, okay, I can sit in this, and I think that's probably one of the greatest, I don't know if it's an epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to refer to it as, but it seems like it's one of the great human sort of, crises of humanity right now, is mediocrity. The satisfaction with just enough. The satisfaction with what's just good enough. To me, with like IKEA, the furniture's just good enough. Just good enough for what? Well, just good enough to last for this much time until you got to buy some more of that same junk. It's not built. You're not going to pass it down to your grandkids. That's the difference with your grandparents' furniture. You could pass down a chair. You could pass down, a cabinet, because it was made of real wood and it was constructed beautifully. But what we're comfortable with now is producing a mediocre everything.
All right.
From our art to our to our general products, to our diets, to our general lifestyles. We're comfortable sitting on Netflix or Instagram, scrolling, living this sort of mediocre life. It's not the worst, it's not the best. There's no great thing achieved at the same time for most people, because they're not being driven by that. So I think what this comes down to is that, just humans in general we're not all the same, and we're not all driven for greatness. not all driven to achieve that. We're not all, I'm even assuming if you take an indigenous tribe, in the Amazon, 30 people, not everyone's going to be driven the same way, even in this sort of shared egalitarian culture of humans. Some are going to want more out of the experience than others. That doesn't mean they want to create an economy, and start, but maybe one of them wants to produce art and has this drive to make something, to do something, because he's the best arrow maker, or this guy's the best hunter, but he doesn't just love it, he loves to hunt. It's his passion. And then there's the other guy, and he's like, man, this, Bob hunts so well, I don't need to hunt that great because Bob hunts great, and I don't even really care that much about hunting. So I go hunting with Bob. Bob does so great. So I don't think humans are all, we're not all wired. Well, I don't think it's obviously a fact that humans are not all wired the same. So when we talk about how do you get humans across the board to eat well, honestly, the greatest experiment that's ever been, we're living in it. This is the greatest experiment. You take, billions of people and you give them whatever they want. You give them access to whatever they want. You give them the most comfort they can have. Because again, with comfort, you can choose it or you can choose not to have it. You could be a monk right now. You could just, surrender, give away all your possessions and go live in a monastery. So humans have never had access, and I'm talking about the basic human, not nobility or people in the monarchy. I'm talking about you right now can live the best life that any human has ever lived on the entire planet. You can have the most comfort, the most food, the access to, you have access to anything a king has ever had access to and more. And you also could go and live in a monastery and have no material possession whatsoever. And so humans are living right now the greatest experiment that's ever existed, where we have access to everything and nothing at the same time. And watching what we do with that is fascinating. And even when you live in a culture where, the culture promotes health and wellness, there's always going to be your outliers that choose to not take care of themselves. They could live in, like, let's take a culture that's known for its health and wellness, like a Scandinavian culture, where you have, good food, clean air, lots of space. There's still going to be a portion of that population that eats shit. And even though they don't have access to the same shit that, say, an American does, because you can really get some shit in America. You can eat food that's illegal to eat in European countries.
Right.
Based on laws.
Yeah.
And yet this person will still find the worst food within that food system. They'll find the worst diet within that dietary system. And because it's got the most sugar, the most whatever they're, driven toward. It's incredible that we haven't recognized yet that the ultimate issue with human beings is that if given anyway, I've owned a lot of dogs. I don't know if you've ever had a dog. Have you ever owned a dog?
A dog?
A dog. D-O-G.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, sure. I have a dog. Yeah, she's my
okay.
sports partner.
Good, beautiful. Yeah. One thing, I have two dogs. One, she will eat only what she needs.
Yeah.
The other dog will eat until he's sick. I cannot explain to you why, but I know other people who have dogs like that as well. Humans, to me, are the same. Some of us will eat until we're sick, and some of us will just eat enough. And I don't think it has anything to do with anything outside of our nature, and whether or not we can temper our addiction to pleasure. If we cannot control our addiction to pleasure, then we will just, we'll be the worst, case scenario for humans, which is a diseased, it's a diseased human. A human is, body's, dying of inflammation and metabolic. Is there a metabolic disaster? So, what I find, again, philosophically difficult is to talk about, well, how do we get the human population to eat well? Well, we don't, because they're not going to. It's like saying, how are we going to get all humans to be peaceful? Well, they're not, and they're never going to be. And that's a fantasy that human beings will that you can get all human beings peaceful. It would be like saying, let's make all human beings violent. You might think that'd be easy because, we have a nature to be violent. So if we just get us all just comfortable with the idea of murdering and killing, and like Vikings, it's okay to just go out and murder, rape, and pillage. But there's going to be some Viking that goes, you know what? I don't know if this is the right behavior. It doesn't feel good for me to do this to other people. So I don't think you can ever get humans to align on any particular pattern of behavior, as in totality, as a collective. I think we can get better in general, or worse in general. So I don't have a lot of, I'll be very honest with you, I'm very, I don't have a lot of faith in these sort of utopian ideas that everyone's going to get on board. But for those who are interested and open-minded, maybe listening to your podcast, somebody who's like actively pursuing a better life, there is a lot of good information and a lot of good, a lot of resources for that person.
Right. Cameron, what would be your own description of health? How do you experience health yourself? How do you know that you are healthy, that you don't need any, or basically, how do you know you're healthy? What is your description of health? I would stop here.
Well, balance. It's just balance, that I can feel when I'm out of balance. Have you ever walked and felt, for whatever reason, you felt some lack of balance? Maybe you were feeling sick, you were ill, you had some, maybe an inner ear infection or something that threw off your, and then maybe you were dizzy, and so like, I think we have an internal compass and an internal, that the inner ear that keeps us walking horizontally, vertically across, this way we balance ourselves. I think it's the same for me. You just feel it, because you've got enough experience with the ideal with your center of gravity, I call it. Like, how do I know if I'm off of my center of gravity? Well, I couldn't know that unless I was familiar with my center of gravity, unless I had a very strong relationship with my center of gravity. I know what I feel like when I'm fast and strong and energetic, when my vitality is high. And I also know what I feel like when it's not. The worst case scenario is, let's say I got COVID. That's probably the sickest I've ever been. I had the first round of COVID, which was the one where you lost your taste, your smell, that first guy.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever felt that sick. It was a real tough virus. My body beat it, and then I never got it again. One time, boom. And I really believe that that's just how the immune system works. You either live or you die. You get stronger or you get weaker, or you just kind of survive. I'm not a survivor. I'm either super strong or I get my ass kicked because, something catches my immune. Like, I think COVID caught our immune systems by surprise because it was new. It was different. And our bodies were like, again, I still think it's, personally, not to get into politics, but I think it was a man-made virus. I do very firmly believe it was made in a laboratory, modified, not from scratch. Of course, viruses exist, but I do believe it was a modified virus that escaped a laboratory, and it swept through the population, and people did well with it or they didn't, depending on your health. And that's why the mortality rate was very high amongst people who were not healthy. So when you've had something like a COVID, you're like, man, I know what it's like to be at the bottom. Or let's say you've had cancer and you've had chemotherapy. You know what it's like to be at the bottom of your energy levels, of your vitality. And then you come back up again and you're like, okay, whoo, I at least I remember that energy. Now, maybe I remember it a little bit better than the average person because I've been an athlete my whole life. So I know what it's like to perform at a high athletic level from the age of, say, 12 to 52. Because I've always been in tune with that. Let's say you started off as a sprinter, you were like an active, or gymnast. Let's say you're a gymnast. That's more practical. They're Olympic 12-year-old gymnasts, gold medal gymnasts, 12 years old, right? So you know what it feels like to be performing at that level at 12. Now you're 40, but you spent a lot of time in that container. So your brain should remember that quite well, actually, how you felt, how strong you felt, how dynamic you felt. And now you're 40, and you should be able to go back and go, okay, I'm never going to be 12 again, but how much of that can I hold on to? And that's been my work with longevity. How much of that vitality and athleticism can I hold on to as I age? And when I start to feel that I'm losing some of that, or some of that, there's a dip or a decline, I do start to look for causation. That's the canary in the coal mine. I'm looking for, whoa, wait a second, that's a red flag. I'm like, wait a second, that's not normal for me. Suddenly I'm sleepy in the middle of the day. Well, suddenly I'm I don't have the same cardiovascular. So I start to around this, that's different. You have a person who's sensitive to difference, but you can't be sensitive to difference if you weren't paying attention to begin with.
Right.
And I've
Right.
always been paying attention to my health, to my vitality, to my athleticism, to my intelligence, to my like mental sharpness, how cognizant, am I? How well can I remember? How quickly can I grab vocabulary to put a sentence together, to have a coherent conversation with you? Like when I start to notice fog, fatigue, those things, I start to say, well, what's changing? Am I eating? Is my diet changed? Have my sleeping habits changed? What's different?
Mm. Would you agree, by listening to you, what I'm getting is it is very much the way how I feel things and how I look at my health. I would definitely, would you agree basically that it is like health is really question of, first of all, learning to listen to your body, to the indicators, like what the
For
body
sure.
says, right?
For sure.
And it's more about like some, I mean, you can easily recognize when there is something wrong. And what I've been trying to, like, how I've been approaching health is really, I really tend to not get into looking into indicators too much, of believing and waiting for somebody to tell me, yeah, you are unhealthy now. The indicators show that you should be unhealthy, but hey, I'm feeling well, I'm feeling full vitality, everything. So in a way it is really question of actually quality of life, and how you feel about yourself, and how you feel about your energetic levels, and how you feel about you living your life. So it is really question of personal experience of life. This would be my description of health. Would you agree with that? I mean, do you I guess, I don't know, I mean, you go to doctors, right? To time you do some checkups and so on, or you don't. I don't do much myself, by the way.
I
How
mean,
much you rely on indicators given to you from the doctor?
I do more now. I used to not at
Okay.
all. As a matter of fact, I probably went 20, I'm sure I went 20 to 30 years of using, never using a doctor unless I had some type of um injury that was requiring immediate attention, like a broken bone.
Okay. Sure.
I never tested my blood. I never looked at any of my uh you know I never looked at any of my personal stats until I started aging now I'm 52, and I started becoming, honestly, not concerned. I became more curious.
Okay.
I started becoming more curious to say, what don't I know that I don't know?
Hmm.
And again, I'm not afraid to see things. I don't think, things don't change me. Like a great example, when I say things don't change me, uh, certain indicators don't change my behavior. A great example of that is when I do my blood work, I always have a high LDL. You've got your HDL and your LDL, which is
Right.
your cholesterol. When I had done my blood for the first time and looked at that, it showed that I had a high level of, the LDL, which is quote unquote called the bad cholesterol. But there's been so much research done recently on the fact that that literally indicates nothing, that it's not a marker for uh, for high cholesterol intake. Is in like, oh, you eat too many steaks, and so now you have high cholesterol, so you need to start taking some type of uh, pharmaceutical to help lower your cholesterol, which is what they do when they see that. But the research, which I did not do, like, in other words, sometimes seeing something, you know, can be a great indicator for you of you know, of something to look out for. It's foreshadowing, and sometimes it's just your body's natural state, and you're just observing it in a snapshot, in a photograph, which is what blood work is. It's a snapshot of your body that day. So it's very difficult, I think, to actually even, you know, count on that completely. But let's say you see a marker for cancer, or you see something like that. I think it's completely useful in regard to that. Like, it's, you know, that's where I see technology being valuable, because I do believe in technology. Let's say in medical technology. I do believe in its value in a lot of sectors of health. I mean, let's be honest, most of us would have probably died already if we hadn't had access to antibiotics or to certain things that help with acute illness. So I'm a fan of it working when it works. Now, I also recognize that a lot of this problem is man-made. In other words, you wouldn't need antibiotics if you didn't have exposure to so many viruses or bacteria that you know, humans spread to each other based on certain behaviors. And, you know, so in other words, you know, a lot of this is just, these are just solutions to problems we created. Great, I get it.
Sure, but we have the solutions to solve that as well. But you know, you're touching on an interesting point, because that's how I see medicine and the big benefit and contribution of modern medicine within especially the acute area, or area of acute diseases. You mentioned broken bones, of course, some acute occurrences, acute pain, and so on. Something that you need to resolve quickly in order to keep the body in shape, to be able then to support it to regain its strength. Where I feel, yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say where I see the modern medicine actually being much worse in solving like long-term chronic problems, and the way how it approaches them, I see as less effective than the acute. And with the acute, I completely agree that actually it saves lives, and it helps, and a lot of us wouldn't be here today if we didn't have the means, like the antibiotics and technology and so on and so on.
Yeah, I'm imagining that most of chronic illness would be resolved if we were just eating and living, you know, in a proper manner, in a correct manner for our species as an animal. And I'm sure you probably, I'm just going to throw this out, you probably could eradicate, and maybe this is, you know, again, I'm making this up, but I would imagine you could eradicate 80 to 90% of all chronic illness with proper lifestyle choices. So there would be no industry for it. And then you'd be back to just acute illness issues, which would be, again, oh, I need, you know, I'm certainly never going to complain that we have the ability to, that we have anesthesia, or we have something that, a painkiller that can, instead of, if I have to reset your broken femur, you know, if you've got a compound fracture and your bone's sticking out of your leg, that I can give you anesthesia and put you to sleep while that's done. Or I can give you a shot and relieve the pain. I certainly don't regret we figured that out.
You're not against that, right?
I'm not against that. I don't think any of us are.
Me neither.
You and I both know, and probably everyone listening to this, we already know that the issue is not acute illness. The issue here is chronic, and that chronic illness in chronic disease is the result of lifestyle choices for the most part. It's rare that I mean, you might have a person, I mean, even when you get something by accident, let's say you get bitten by a tick and you get Lyme disease, you get some kind of, issue from something that had nothing to do with your lifestyle choices. But how much of your previous lifestyle, how much of your diet, how much of your current immune, if your immune its health, how much of that plays into the Lyme issue? Like if you were strong if you were a young 12-year-old kid with great immune system, great health, would that pass through you quickly? Or is the fact that you are, vulnerable, is that going to play a role in how long it takes for you to get this disease, to get it moved through you? And so, sometimes you're just unlucky and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but you can never say your health is unlucky. That's not luck. That's a choice. And that's the difference. If I was going to argue any point with a person, I would say there's always going to be, a part of life that's unpredictable and uncontrollable, where you're lucky and unlucky. But the part that you can control is how vital you are, how strong and healthy you are through proper lifestyle. And that, it's like saying that, you give two people $10 million as a gift. One of them knows how to manage money and one doesn't. The 10 million given to the person who has never had money, has never had wealth, is likely going to be gone quite quickly. It's going to be poorly used. The person who's managed wealth, understands wealth, who knows how to build wealth and create wealth, will turn that 10 million probably into 50 million. And so that's just a metaphor for health and wellness. If I'm lucky enough to get the opportunity to do something and I'm healthy, I'll probably be able to parlay that into some great stuff. If I'm unhealthy because I've chosen I've chosen to be, let's call it health illiterate, I didn't take care of myself, then if I happen to get struck by disease, it's probably going to be very hard on me. I could possibly die. I could possibly, I say probably and possibly, but I could likely be, battling that disease my whole life. So to me, it's imperative that we're prepared for the worst. We have armor. We're wearing our armor. My strength is my armor. My physical strength, my muscles, my power, my heart, my cardio, my conditioning. All of these things are my armor against whatever moments just happen to unfold in front of me that I don't have control of. I don't have control of whether this roof drops on me right now. Maybe 20 years ago when they built this house, the builders, just they were lazy. They made some mistakes. They didn't do something. And the next thing you know, boom. Or I'm a human being living in a war zone and a bomb just happens to get off course or even purposefully drop in my home. They're just things you just can't control, but you can control how you respond to them and how you prepare for them. And that to me is the message of longevity. How are you prepared for the worst? And how do you respond to the worst? Those two things define your entire experience.
Okay. Okay. You said an interesting word. I mean, interesting because you use coherence, right? We are in the Healing with Coherence podcast, and coherence is a big word for me. It's interesting how, you know, different words have been coming in use. There used to be like integrative health, then it used to be like holistic health. Now everything goes into coherence, like coherent health and coherence for health and so on. So talking about health and being prepared, you know, for everything that bombards your body and for everything that is unpredictable, how would you express what do you feel, what do you think is coherence in terms of your health and your body, how it is expressed?
I'll be honest with you. The term coherence is not a word. It's not a term I use regularly, if not ever. I don't have a relationship with the word, because as with the English language, we have, if you ever look at a thesaurus in English, there's about 40 words that mean this, that can be used this in the same sentence to mean the same thing. So coherent, the way that I would use the word coherent, and I will tell you, I've never used that word to describe health. And it's not because I don't.
You used it to express, to describe our conversation or something like that? You said like to have a coherent conversation, like
Yes,
a bit earlier, yeah?
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the way I would use the term. Again, I have no issue with the word used in health. I have no argument for its merit, at all. It's just not a word that comes to my mind when I think coherence. I think about sort of mental competence. Are you coherent?
Okay.
Are you aware? Are you, I guess awareness.
Okay.
In some ways, again, I'll be honest with you. I don't even know how the word is defined in the English. Like if I were to look it up and you said, what is the exact definition of coherent? I would probably not be able to tell you that. I know that the way I think of the word, which is often
that's what I'm rather asking, you know. I mean, I'm really not expecting you to give me a description of the word or meaning. It's more, how do you feel about that? And if because my next question would be, if we take, let's say, I don't know, like holistic and holistic approach to health and holistic health. I'm more curious to to make the parallel again to what your area of expertise is basically, and the parallel to Budokon. How and like how Budokon and the mixed martial arts help the body to be holistically healthy, or to be coherent, or to stay healthy in general, because I from what I've read, Budokon is not only about the physical, but it's about mental as well. It's even about going into relationships, because you are building a community and you've built a community around. So that's the kind of where I've been heading, with my question. That's what I'm interested to explore, and by that to go shortly as well into Budokon, because of course.
I mean, Budokon, is just a path. I don't even find the subject like particularly interesting outside of the fact that it's just a way of titling, rational common sense approach to being a human. I'm just trying to be as human as possible, and I just gave it a name that I think, sort of metaphorically covered what I feel like the journey is about, because Budokon literally translates in Japanese as the way of the warrior spirit, just way of warrior spirit, Budokon. Um, so the way is the path. Warrior is the particular archetype that I've chosen. But I think we all have to have an archetype that we choose to live by. You could be the healer, you could be the warrior, you could be the artist, you could be the
Yeah.
merchant. I, find really interesting is the warrior archetype. It's not the only. I mean, I wouldn't define warrior probably the way that everyone does. I would define a warrior as a more complex character, much more like the samurai was at the peak of their development, which was as an artist, it was a Renaissance man, a Renaissance character, a poet, artist, fighter, monk, just a far more layered individual in regard to their lives. And that's why the motto of our school is the way you do anything is the way you do everything, because that's the samurai to me. It's your path in your way needs to be consistent. So the way I eat should reflect the way I think, and the way I move, the way I love, the way I parent. They're all the same, just different versions of the same. So I don't get too stuck on the titling of that. It just happens to be what I thought was a decent name.
Okay.
But back to coherence, and given that coherence, I think is its fundamental, its fundamental sort of utility is to describe what is reasonable, what seems to be yoked together well, coherent. To live a coherent lifestyle, which to say holistic, which would be to the whole, integrated, integral. Everything is connected. Everything is, everything affects everything else. These are important things. Budokon, as a practice, operates off of this model by creating a somewhat complex system that doesn't rely on one way or one particular path. It's a number of different paths that come together coherently, hopefully, and holistically and integrally, that produce a very particular outcome. Let me just break it down in basics. We don't just teach yoga as a path, though we teach yoga, because yoga alone would not bring the practitioner into enough contact with confrontation and the war, the art of war, because yoga, philosophically, yoga touches everything. You can be on the battlefield and be in contact with yoga, not yoga posture, but philosophically yoga, the yoking of things, of the yin and the yang, the good and the bad, the high and the low, the depth and the height. Yes, all of this can show up in the midst of a war. But what's physically missing from yoga is confrontation in the form of physical confrontation that you can only get from the practice of martial arts.
Okay.
Martial arts doesn't bring you into contact enough with, in my opinion, with the healing art of yoga, which is more recovery, restoration, repair. Is, you know, me sitting with my body, feeling my body, moving my body, you know, seeing my body without the concern of protecting it.
Okay.
There's a very big difference, because when I'm in the middle of war, when I'm in the middle of martial arts training, I'm protecting myself at all times, while at the same time trying to dominate or win over another human being in a physical capacity, at least. You know? So that brings up different things that yoga just won't bring up. So just by yoking yoga and martial arts, I already create something unique there. And then you add in the other elements that we teach, whether it's, you know, nutrition, or you know, the focus on development of character, of skills and self, all that stuff being brought in as a, you know, it's focal points. You know, again, that's why Budokon is a university versus, you know, a methodology specifically. We teach all of these different, we teach ways of developing oneself, different paths, but collectively, we're hopefully going to get dumped right into the ocean. So you've got all these rivers you're navigating, you know, and you're going to ride down this river and that river and that river. You're going to navigate them all because they all bring something different, but they're all dumping out into the ocean ultimately, which becomes the, you know, I would argue that learning how to navigate a river is not knowing how to navigate the ocean.
Okay.
You know, if I was a sailor and I was a captain, I would say, okay, and you told me, and I said, what have you navigated? You said, I've navigated many rivers. I would not just put you on a boat and say, well, get out in the ocean now and go. Because
sure.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that these rivers prepare you for the ocean, but they're not the ocean. And the ocean is not the rivers. Rivers are calm compared to this. They have their problems, but they'll never be the vast, you know, body of water that the ocean is. So I think that metaphorically, that's you know, it's good for you to navigate many rivers. And before, you know, as you're, you know, at the same time learning to work in the deep water, you know,
yeah,
with the mother.
Well, in that sense, how do you feel movement and everything that you've been teaching within Budokon is connected to mind and to thinking? Because, you know, like there is this trend now, a lot of people speak about connection between movement and thinking. Like there is like Ido Portal, who's been presenting like movement training as a way of getting to know yourself. Like practically, what do you see is the added value of moving your body to developing your thinking as well?
I don't think that idea is innovative at all. I mean, there's nothing to me like I don't think Ido Portal's ever said an original thing in his life. You know, that there's nothing original about that. If that hasn't been said by every, you know, Bagua, Tai Chi movement, like I can't imagine how many people have, you know, modern dance instructors, teachers, you know, from Martha Graham to Alvin Ailey, to who knows how many people, and that's just contemporary. Who knows how many people have taught the idea that, movement reveals self, and that self reveals movement. I mean, it's like, so I don't think that's original in any capacity. I think in fact it's just self-evident. I don't think there's anything to talk about with that, because it's self-evident. It was like the need to go into that as if that's something, that's not like just uber obvious to me. And it's almost like, how does movement connect to the mind? And it's just like, how does water connect to wetness? It's just, to me, just so self-evident that I don't even take, I don't take the question seriously, because I think it's just not. And again, it's not that it's not an in and of itself, and it couldn't be an interesting question. The problem I have with the question is it's not, I don't think anything gets discovered there. I mean, do you want to talk about it from a scientific perspective? Because, you can break down how, the brain learns movement by mistake making, and how your neuropathways develop based on doing things right and wrong, and what that develops in the, in the body's, nervous system, muscular system. You could talk about that. You could talk about the psychological, benefits of moving, because movement is a constant process of discovery when you move on purpose. Because when you move on purpose, you're trying to achieve something, which means that you can make, and you will make, many, many mistakes, because your movement. That's why sports are amazing. They develop skill. Skill develops character. This is the beauty of sport. Sport is this container that forces you to develop skill through mistake making. And as you develop your skill, at the same time, you're given the opportunity to also develop character in that, the character that it takes to fail and keep going, courage, discipline, all these things get developed. So, there are a million ways to talk about movement and mind, in that, connected in that way. I just think that what we, maybe the more important question for us is, why are we not interested? Why are we, as a society, and this is happening across the world, why are we becoming less and less interested in movement, as a communal experience? Like, why, in some cultures, the way you commune is through sport. You come together collectively through sport.
Yeah.
That's the culture. And if you're a young male or a young female, it's just implied you will do that. You will play that sport. And then you will go in and watch the younger generation play it again. And you'll have that. And that's how you commune. That's how you commune with another village next door. You come together and play each other. These things have been very important for the development of culture and time. And now we're losing a lot of that because humans are just becoming less and less inspired to move because we want to sit in front of a screen and stare at it, because the human mind, being that it's just a pharmacy, right? The brain is a pharmacy that's producing, whatever drugs we need at the time. What's amazing is how what we see is so potent at producing all of these chemicals, to the point where all we want to do is feel good. And all we need to do to feel good is, sit and watch and listen and just sort of observe. It's like a movie. Sometimes a movie is just so lovely because like 2 hours, you just literally do nothing but experience another world, whether it's an action, it's a love story, it's whatever. You're just going to experience this other thing voyeuristically, but at the same time, through your own brain, you're going to feel the chemicals of what it's like to be scared, to be in war, to be making love. You're going to feel all this in yourself, and you don't have to do a goddamn thing but lay there. It's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing, and it's the worst thing we've ever ultimately done to ourselves. It is probably the worst thing human beings have ever figured out about consciousness, because it will be the thing that produces, in my opinion, it will ultimately produce the downfall of human civilization as we know it. It will never be the same. We will never be able to go back to the indigenous experience, like not just indigenous tribal pre-civilization experience that we came from. That will be gone. At some point, it will be completely gone from the entire face of the planet, which is insane to understand, that at some point we will lose every bit of that. And I find that to be these existential problems to be far greater. They take up far more of my time than some of these other questions. Again, like mind and movement. I'm just like, my God. So it's not so much to me what is mind and movement. It's like, but what are we losing if we lose that? If we lose the importance of movement, what will be lost? And I think it's life as we know it. I think it's, and again, we might think to ourselves, we can maintain it, we can sustain some version of it by running on a treadmill, by staying active